Good evening. My name is Turner Bitton. I'm the executive director here at Westview Media. We'd like to welcome you to our event in collaboration with NeighborWorks Salt Lake. Before we get started, I'm going to turn it over to Jasmine Walton from NeighborWorks for a couple of announcements.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us tonight. We're really excited to have this conversation on digital inclusion on the West Side. This is a part of an initiative that NeighborWorks has had for the whole month of November and part of December here, just to bring more awareness to the digital divide that has happened due to COVID on the West Side of Salt Lake City, and to really bring resources to the community. So we're excited to have all of our panelists here and to have this great discussion with you guys tonight.
Thank you, Jasmine. And to get us started, I'd like to welcome all of our panelists on camera. We're joined by some really, really great folks who are working, as Jasmine said, in the field of digital inclusion right here in Salt Lake. And the purpose of tonight's town hall is to inspire all of you who are watching to take action in our community. And we hope that by hearing the stories of the folks who are here locally, who are also working in this field, that you'll be inspired to take action to help make sure that everyone is included in our digital spaces. So to get started, I'm going to let each panelist introduce themselves. And why don't we start with you, Shauna, and then we'll go to Jacob, James, and then Joseph, if you wouldn't mind going last.
Hi, I'm Shauna Edson. I'm the Digital Inclusion Coordinator for the Salt Lake City Public Library.
And I'm Jacob Brace. I'm the Government Community Affairs Manager for Google Fiber here in the state of Utah. I'm happy to be here with everybody.
James Yapias, Development and Salt Lake Education Foundation Director.
I'm Joe Silverswag. I manage government affairs for Comcast's operations here in Utah.
Thank you. And for those who are tuning in, I think one of the things that we should do to get started for those that are watching is define what digital inclusion means. And so I'm going to go to Shauna first. And if you wouldn't mind just defining digital inclusion. And then after that, if any of the other panelists have anything that they would like to add to that definition, let's go ahead and just build on it from there. But for now, let's have Shauna start.
Great. Thanks, Turner. Yeah, and so for me, digital inclusion is the work that we need to do so everyone can easily access and use technology to communicate, learn, work, and play. It means all individuals and community have the information, technology capacity needed for full participation in our society, civic engagement, economy, and access to essential services. So right now that can look like having the technology that you need to be able to work from home, use telehealth, do your schoolwork for remote learning, as well as talking to the people that are meaningful, our friends and family, and using technology.
Thank you. Is there any of the panelists like to build on top of that?
Yeah, one thing I think is important to recognize, there are a lot of different ways in which a person can lack digital access and digital equality. It's not just the economic or regional factors that are often the focus of digital equity activities, but there are also language barriers to digital equality, and then accessibility barriers. Disabled folks in our communities sometimes don't have the same access, often don't have the same access to our systems, and that's something we have to work on as well.
Yeah, thank you. I tend to like to think in terms of three main areas about digital equity. So the first is in equipment or technology, kind of the physical things that someone needs, whether that's a laptop, whether that's a smartphone, the kind of physical side of access. The second is access. So it doesn't do you any good if you have a smart device, but you don't have access to high-speed internet or all of the other things that we generally need to access digital spaces. And then the last is skills, the skills to navigate digital spaces. And that often can be a language barrier. It can be a variety of different ways that that shows up. So my next question, and I think I'll start with James and then Jasmine, but how does digital equity work show up in your day-to-day work? And we'll start with James.
That is a great question, because I believe that digital equity, we deal with families on a day-to-day basis. Our students that attend Salt Lake City School District, it impacts their homes. It impacts everything that comes all the way from school, home, community, having access to resources in the community, being able to apply for CHIP and Medicaid online. As you mentioned a few minutes ago, it's the day-to-day opportunity that we can provide for our families as it relates to digital inclusion and equity. We've had a tremendous, COVID-19 has done a lot of, has impacted our families, and our goal has been to really, really provide an opportunity for our families to be educated also how to navigate the system and how to work within the current situation. Having access to hardware is one thing, but the training, the literacy, helping families understand what's safe online and providing the tools necessary for their students to learn is so critical for us. And so the day-to-day thing that we deal with is really providing our students an opportunity to learn more and how to safely navigate online once they have the digital, the hardware with them.
Thank you. And what about you, Jasmine?
Yeah, so we see some of the same challenges here at NeighborWorks that James is facing in the Salt Lake City School District, because we have a lot of families who are trying to access our resources for home buyer education and things like that, who need to have a laptop or need access to the internet, and they don't have that. So here at NeighborWorks, we've started to really try to take a step into this digital realm because we're new to it. And so over the last month, we've been trying to host various webinars to get people information about how to use the technology that they have, how to get new technology. So we've actually started a program to be able to help provide laptops to those in the community that need them, and just making that process, because even that process of trying to get equipment can be hard for some families because we can't meet in person right now. So everything has to be online. And we kind of have this little joke going here in the office, like we're trying to help people get what they need and they don't have the thing that they're applying for. So it makes it really challenging for us. So we've had to get really creative in our outreach and how we help families just get access to these resources.
Thank you. And what about you, Jacob? And then we'll go over to Joe.
Yeah, as a newcomer in terms of Google Fiber, the last 12 years or so, getting into the business of bringing fiber optics to the home, which gives super fast access to the internet at gigabit symmetrical speeds. The importance of digital inclusion comes prior to even doing that work and recognizing the have and have nots of the community. And you guys have all hit on the access of the pipeline of the internet, the devices, and the education. What I see often in our work, we do community connection programs with nonprofits, giving them free access or no cost access to gigabit service so that they can enhance their service delivery as well as function more efficiently as a nonprofit. We work with housing partners, public and private, on gigabit communities where those units for low-income households have access to a gigabit service symmetrical. We've been sponsors of digital inclusion fellowships nationally with our partners NDIA, and we continue to support many community organizations, libraries, school districts on their efforts because they truly do know their clientele more intimately and what their needs are. It's definitely a journey. I think this work started out nearly 20 years ago with the recognition of digital divide. A lot of the nomenclature now is around digital inclusion. And I think Shauna did a really good job of outlining a lot of the steps and the ways that we're recognizing digital inclusion. And then, Joseph started to hit on what I think we're all seeking to do or get to, which is that space and place of digital equity, and having this be a less reactive, but more of a norm in our lives. And I think that that's something that we continue to work with James and the Salt Lake Education Foundation and the library on, how do you build digital inclusion into your everyday so that your services are digitally equitable, not just in access, but also in intentional purpose. And so we're excited to be among this group, as well as a lot of Utah organizations that in some regards are the trendsetters, are the best practices. Salt Lake City, in fact, was recognized as a trendsetter in digital inclusion, and had a digital equity policy passed at the city council level, the first of its kind in the state of Utah. So this is an exciting space to be in, and this state is an exciting state to be working with.
Thank you. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, we really appreciate all the contributions, certainly our nonprofit and government partners, and I've personally seen how hard Jacob and Google are working to do things like connect, MDUs and other folks who need connecting. Really appreciate their kind of pitching in. It's certainly an effort that's going to take every ISP to working together to really build the kind of internet that we want to have for everybody in our communities. As for Comcast's efforts, it's a constant part of my day-to-day. A cornerstone of Comcast digital inclusion effort is Internet Essentials, which is a $9.95 a month broadband in-home Wi-Fi internet. It's available to anybody in our network footprint who receives federal assistance. And I work to share the story of Internet Essentials with local governments, with community partner organizations, and with schools, and work on ways to partner with them to deliver both the story of Internet Essentials and then the service itself to as many people as we can. We're doing recent partnerships with Salt Lake City School District, Canyon School District, the state of Utah, a host of nonprofit and government partners. We're also rolling out, this is a new initiative on top of Internet Essentials, 1,000 nationwide dedicated high-speed wireless lift zones, what we're calling them, designed to help people without home access to still be able to get to the internet in the community gathering places that they already frequent. So we're using Comcast Business Services to hook up community centers and other local gathering places across the country. We've actually already got 20 of those in queue across Utah to launch early next year, and we should have a couple standing up, I think, in the next week or two. People can start accessing the internet, their community centers.
Thank you. I just have two quick follow-up questions. You used two acronyms. I believe it was NPU and ISP. Would you just mind defining those?
Oh, sure. So I said MDU. That's kind of a word salad. Sorry, it's a multi-dwelling unit. It's just a word that we use in the industry to describe an apartment building or another area where a lot of people live together. The Google fiber infrastructure is a really great solution for those folks. Internet Essentials were also in those areas, but it's a particularly powerful tool for accessing people who live in single family or less dense, let's say less dense residential areas, because we can go individual customer by individual customer and connect them at low cost and high speed. Thank you.
And then Shauna, how does digital inclusion show up in your day-to-day work?
Digital inclusion at the library is, it's interesting to see how we've all been trying to work hard to adjust to our public computer labs no longer providing that access that so many people are used to. And I use the word interesting because we weren't sure what that could look like, how we could provide alternative access for individuals who need it. Some cities have lots of public computer labs available. Salt Lake City, we have our city library, 8 locations, as well as the Sorensen Unity Center. So when all of those closed, there was really not a lot of locations for people to go for that public access. So in our public computer lab spaces, we would offer classes to community members, as well as access to just using a computer for whatever folks needed. So today we're working on a remote model with a call-in number, as well as providing access to devices, as well as internet connection in other ways. So we've been working with Google Fiber. They've sponsored some hotspots that we're going to be able to make available. We've been working with James, the Salt Lake Education Foundation, to see how we can better support our students and the adults that are supporting those students and families. We're working on some Internet Essential sponsorships and supporting Jasmine in her work. So I think we're learning that it takes a whole community to address digital inclusion and digital equity for those to help meet, to help support our community members where those gaps have arisen.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to give you all a break really quickly and just turn to the audience really quick and let you all know, for those that are watching live, if you're watching on Facebook, please be sure if you have questions to submit them in the chat, and I'll be sure to ask them of panelists. For my next question, I want to move on to the work that either you all are doing or that community partners that you work with are doing to give folks an idea of the types of programs that exist or the types of work that's being done. I think first I'll start with James. Can you share an example of a program that you've seen this year, or something maybe even that the school district has done that has helped bridge the digital divide?
Absolutely. First of all, we've had the great opportunity to work with Comcast, Mobile Beacon, X Mission, Google Fiber, Jacob and their team, and PC for People. We've donated hundreds of computers. In addition, we've written some grants and received some CARE Act funding to ensure that all of our students in the district have a device. Any to 22,000 students, if they want a computer, all they have to do is ask their counselor or their principal, and the principals have been working very close with the students. So we've had our students access to the device. But most importantly, with Internet Essentials, what we've done recently is sponsored hundreds of families, paid for a full year of free internet, Wi-Fi connection. We've also had the great pleasure to work with Google Fiber, where we've gone into an apartment complex and sponsor some of the families for the full year. I believe families at Palmer Apartment who have benefited from that. And it's a great opportunity for them, because we've tried buses and tried to do the Wi-Fi connection by putting a device on the bus and parking it out in front of the apartment. It became challenging because of the walls and the brick and mortar made it. A lot of the students were not able to have access because of it. So Jacob came up with an idea along with Mike Harmon and the foundation. We teamed up to be able to provide access. We've also worked very close with Shauna to be able to, access one thing, but also our families, struggle in understanding how to navigate that process, how to help their students online. If they've never had the opportunity to understand that, that training is so critical. So, for example, our after school program is all virtual, and we've had hundreds of students participating online, and it's been really a neat experience where they're doing a lot of STEAM work and a lot of support, to really extend the day for them. So it is really an opportunity. It's a collaborative opportunity. We wouldn't be able to do it alone, but we've been able to give access, Wi-Fi connection, hotspots, computers to families. And I think the most important part is now it's that application piece, what we're working right now in Salt Lake City School District.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Jacob and Joe. Maybe we'll go Jacob first and then Joe afterward. But As folks that are watching, I think one of the things that I take away from this panel is that the village, the need for a full village to help bridge the digital divide. And I'm wondering if you could speak as an internet service provider about the unique role that you both play in providing access to families. James kind of touched on it, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to build on that.
I appreciate that, Turner. You know, we're still building out Salt Lake City, and there are neighborhoods that we just haven't had a chance to have our crews do the work yet and get the households connected. And you know, those are areas that are in need of higher speed, faster speed, reliable internet. And so, you know, the ISP element, or the internet service provider to the home, is not something we can just instantly, you know, blanket out there and say that we have that availability for everybody. But that doesn't excuse us. It actually gives us a different responsibility to support the community in its connectivity goals, whether it's education, whether it's employment, or even entertainment, to save money in some ways. And so it does take that village. I'm thankful that here in the Salt Lake County Valley, all the way down to Utah County, there are a lot of interested players and partners pre-COVID that have been doing this work. And so they were well versed and able to make some quick pivot actions to react appropriately during COVID, to rally the community around, to, you know, promote the importance of connectivity, device awareness, and then how to bring those two things together, to work from home, to educate from home, to really stay at home during mandate times, et cetera. And I think that was a huge cutting edge advantage for our communities here. We still have a ton of work, right? Like I think we're still in a very reactive mode. Technology, from the hardware to the software to the speed of internet and the demands of the Internet of Things at your home, make it that the work of digital equity is an evolving subject matter, and the players, the leaders, and the consumers all need to be adjusting just as fast, because, you know, as soon as James hands out a laptop, who knows, there's a shinier, faster laptop out there that the kids need in order to do an online STEM program that's eventually going to have, you know, virtual reality tied to it, right? Like, so how do we continue to support our education and employment centers in a way that the evolution doesn't ever get as far in a chasm as it was, you know, really pre-COVID. Pre-COVID put us in a time warp to really elevate the importance of this, and that's a good thing, right? And that's being optimistic during the pandemic times. But I really also believe that it's formed a lot of collaborative consortium efforts, and I hope that that's what we all sustain in the effort out of the pandemic, and continue to improve our communities in this work of digital inclusion towards digital equity.
Thank you.
Yeah, to build on what Jacob said, Comcast launched Internet Essentials in 2011. We've been at Digital Equity for almost a decade. We recognize the shared responsibilities of internet service providers to make sure that the internet works for everybody. And it has been, COVID's been an extraordinary challenge, and Comcast has certainly risen to meet that challenge. We added a 60-day free Internet Essentials offer that now runs all the way through the end of June. Any new Internet Essentials customer has 60 days free for COVID-19, along with a number of other suspensions and lightening of a variety of different internal rules and regulations to make it easier for customers to sign up and to stay customers, and to get the kind of internet that they need to weather the storm. To build on what Jacob was saying, it has been the experience of my career in digital equity that it's always been an issue, but it wasn't an issue that was recognized equally by everybody. And COVID-19 has created a shared reality and a recognition that the internet is essential, and that we need to make sure that everybody has access to it. And then until they do, we're not able to really reap the benefits of the community that we're creating. We live in this extraordinary age where we're building a digital global community where we all get to share, where we all get to communicate. And it's really, really special. It's unique. It's something that's never happened before, presents its own challenges. But I think it's at the heart of it, it is absolutely essential that the global community not leave people behind. And that's what digital equity is really about. And so I'm hoping that as we tackle COVID-19, as we come out of COVID-19, we're going to keep this sense of a village of committed partners, whether it's corporate partners, nonprofit partners, community and government, all working together to really close the door on this emerging challenge of digital equity.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask Shauna and Jasmine a similar question, but I think your roles are slightly different in that you're providing, certainly I would consider NeighborWorks and the library social service providers, that you have folks come to you for so much more than just digital equity or digital inclusion support. So I'm just wondering how, what types of programs or types of things you're doing to meet the folks that you serve where they're at. And we'll start with Shauna, sorry.
So the library is super excited about a new project that we just launched. It's called Digital Navigators. And the Digital Navigator project started ideating in April as a response to kind of our shutdown world that we're in right now. And it was funded by a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences. And so the Digital Navigators is a call-in number. It's our main library call-in number. So an individual can call into the number and they're connected with a digital navigator who helps them set a digital access goal. So it could be to find a low-cost internet provider. It could be to try to connect them with a free or low-cost device. We do have some limited devices for no cost for community members. And then they also help folks with digital literacy goals. So we have a huge resource of learning materials for people who can learn on their own. The Digital Navigators also have time to work with individuals one-on-one through video conferencing or over the phone and in person when allows. When we're allowed to meet. We're working with the University Neighborhood Partners, Catholic Community Services, and Swazo Business Center all have a full-time digital navigator, as well as the city library has 3 part-time digital navigators. So we welcome community members to call in and connect with a digital navigator who can provide ongoing digital access support.
Thank you. How about you, Jasmine?
Yeah, and to build on what Shauna had said, we want to act as a resource for community members in this digital landscape, because the digital inclusion world is something that NeighborWorks is still just diving kind of headfirst into. And so we're still trying to figure out exactly what our role is. And so for the time being, we really feel like it's about being that facilitator of resources that we know that we have great partners out there that are doing, like Shauna mentioned, with the Digital Navigators program. So we're excited to be able to provide that. Over the last month, like I'd mentioned earlier, we've been trying to figure out how we get families access to devices, and then also trying to dip our foot into the digital literacy, because we found even just with our own board, there's really a lack of just understanding and knowledge of how powerful just your device is on its own, without even purchasing a new device. And so even though technology is continually to advance, sometimes your device that you have at home can still be just as useful depending on what you need to use it for. And I think a lot of people forget about that. So that's something that we have as a goal this year. And then we are also working on trying to just make all of our programs that we do at NeighborWorks digitally inclusive and having that focal point. So for our Westside Leadership Institute program, which is our leadership training that we do, we had pre-COVID, we had written a grant to be able to purchase laptops for our students to use during class time and while they were a part of the cohort. So we actually secured those grant funds, and we are in the process of purchasing laptops that we'll have here for students to be able to use who need them, because we realize it's a necessity for students to be able to have access, even just to take notes right during class. So we're excited about those things, and just excited about all of the things that our many partners are doing, and just being able to connect community members with all of the great resources that are out there for them.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question, but before I do that, I'm going to just give one more plug to the audience. If you're watching and you have a question, or you'd like one of the panelists to answer something, you have a question about one of the programs that have been mentioned, please feel free to put it here in the Facebook chat, and we'll be sure to ask that. The next question, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we've talked about by breaking out into specific areas within digital inclusion. So the first one, I'm going to start in reverse order, since we kind of ended on a skills note. And the question that I'd like to pose to our panelists is, how can each of us as individuals promote skill building and those digital literacy skills that have been mentioned? I think I'll start with Joe, if that's okay, and go from you on. Oh, you're muted.
There it goes. Okay. Yeah, skills are a critical component of it. I think from a personal perspective, it's about making sure to connect skills to digital equity. I think for a lot of folks, digital inclusion, I think for a lot of folks, skills are forgotten, and they say, well, we hooked them up, we gave them a laptop, now we can move on. But I think anybody who's worked in this field for very long knows that those skills can be absolutely critical, and really fundamental skills that somebody who's grown up and been sort of totally enmeshed in a digital environment for their whole life don't even realize are skills. Things like turning your computer on and logging in and setting up an email, and those kinds of really basic things that come naturally to people who have spent their whole lives doing them. They need to be taught, and we need to make sure that everybody has those skills. That's part of why Comcast works so hard on it. We advocate for digital literacy and skills. We sponsor digital literacy training courses across the nation. In Utah right now, we're working with the Swazo Business Center, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Utah, Asian Association of Utah, International Rescue Committee, YWCA, Future in Design, and other organizations to fund a variety of digital skills training. And then anybody who is an Internet Essentials customer, it pops up right on the right side of your screen when you log into the Internet Essentials website. You pull up the splash page, and there's onboard digital literacy education for each and every Internet Essentials customer, which I think is all wonderful. But the message needs to be carried forward to community partners that it's not enough just to flip the switch and turn on the internet. And then I think it needs to be carried forward to the clients as well, and help them understand just how powerful it is to have those skills and really be able to use the technology. You can do so much more with it than you might imagine at first glance. And that's a big part of it too, is telling that story to the person you're connecting as well as the community.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to James next with a little bit of a preface. I think you have a little bit of a unique perspective, given that you're serving children and youth and folks all along the age spectrum. So I'm wondering how how Salt Lake City School District has evolved to provide that type of skills training in digital literacy.
Well, certainly our teachers have been working very hard to address that, developing those skills with the students, teaching those classes remotely. And at the beginning, even for our teachers, it was a challenge. But I do believe that we're moving right along with quite a few professional developments. Our principals, our counselors, we've been able to provide a lot of support for our teachers, but at the same time, through our teaching and learning department, we've been able to provide training for our paraprofessionals, so that way we can reach out not only to the students, but also the parents. The parents are a critical piece to all this. Having a space for the students to be able to sit at their homes and have a quiet space where they're learning virtually, and at the same time be able to understand what does it take to navigate through the internet. I think my perspective as far as students, many of them they're so much further ahead than their parents in technology, but at the same time our parents are there's this gap that we have to close in multiple languages, with Spanish, Swahili, Tongan, any of those languages, that we can provide resources for our families to be able to do some of the basic skills. That is so critical. And so right now what we're doing is definitely connecting with our students, but also our paraprofessionals, and our teachers are connecting with the families. And it's been a really neat experience, and we've had some challenges. We got a long ways to go, but I can tell you that our teacher of the year, John Arthur, for example, is constantly communicating with the parents and visiting. If the students don't log in, they're not synchronizing and they're not on learning, he does make sure that he does home visits, because we got to connect the parents and we got to get a complete buy-in from them. So I think building the skills, really, it has a lot to do, one, with the students, but also building the skills of the parents. And that takes a lot, because we have 89 different languages spoken in Salt Lake City School District. And that, I think each and every one of us, not only in the Title I schools, but just in our city in general, we've been really taking that to heart to make sure that we do a good job on that.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to go next to Shauna. When I think of the library, I live here in the Glendale neighborhood of Salt Lake City. And when I think of the library, I think of all the computers at the Glendale branch that are always full of kids and my neighbors and folks that are there using the computers and learning. And I'm just wondering, and I know things are a little difficult with COVID right now, but just wondering what unique role librarians in our library system plays in providing digital literacy skills.
Yeah, the Glendale branch is one of my favorite places to go in the afternoon. It's so vibrant. I love seeing all the folks in there using it after school. In fact, one of the first real encounters I had was when I started working at the city library with the Glendale community. I was waiting for a meeting in front of the Glendale community, the Glendale library. It was during the summer at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I was early, so the doors were locked and I was waiting out front, and there was a line of kids. They had to be maybe 10 years old waiting to get inside the library before it opened during the summer. I was like, wow, what, my kids are in bed asleep. What's going on? What would get a kid up in the summer to go to the library? And they were waiting to play Minecraft, and they were so excited to be able to go in, and that library function and use the computers to play together and have fun and learn and explore. And that's really what we want our computer spaces to be, our creative labs and our public computer labs, is to be a place where people can go and access those technologies to learn and play together. Right now, that's being done remotely with our digital navigators, but.
Well, I know that I'm one of the many residents that wants the libraries to be open as soon as possible, and thank you for all the work you do. Jacob, I'm going to go to you next. I'm going to shamelessly plug one of Google's programs, but the G Suite for nonprofits is a lifeline for so many nonprofits of all different sizes. And I just wanted to know what types of work Google does to bridge the digital divide in terms of digital literacy.
Yeah, so you're getting into another bet of Alphabet, which is the work that comes out of Google, and G Suite being one of the premier offerings for nonprofits and support of their delivery of service. And it's a great resource to be collaborative and cooperative in all of its work elements. It's a similar program to Google in the Classroom, which is a widely used program throughout the state of Utah as well as the nation. And then there's another program that has been growing, no pun intended on that one, but has been growing over the last 12 months. So just really started pre-COVID, but has boomed during COVID, which is Grow with Google. And Grow with Google has resources that range from nonprofit to educator education to employment. Veterans can receive specific assistance on resume building and skill development through digital skill building. In fact, they've started providing a certificate at the end of some of the classes to really bolster the validity of the work that gets put in to that. I do want to, you asked the question of how can each of us help develop the skills, and I'm going to go a little bit higher and say patience. Patience is a huge part of the skill building world. Don't have assumptions, or at least throw all assumptions out the window. And lastly, it's an independent process. And we've gone, Google Fiber has done a lot of different methods of partnership as well as direct service, which is not our world in terms of digital skill building, but we've tried and we've learned along the way, whether it be working with seniors and building up their skill building, or working with universities and having those students become akin to what Shauna's working on with digital navigators. And even in our community connections, from the SPY Hops and the YWCAs and IRC and how they work with their residents, it is almost a one-to-one need every time, no matter what. You could give two people the same device, the same software, but their needs are intrinsically unique to what they're trying to get out of it. That becomes, on a grand scale, extremely complicated. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give James and the superintendent, Larry Madden, and the school board a shout out for their efforts on being an online education institution right now. It's something that universities have struggled with, and I think the Salt Lake City School District is doing an extremely commendable job right now. By no means could they have ever had an assumption of what the base level knowledge of their student population is, of what their teacher population is, and even the administration, right? Like I think that when everybody pivoted to doing online meetings, there were hiccups, right? Like how many of us have not been able to find the mute button? And I think the thing about that, though, is we need to tear down the embarrassment of not knowing some of these things and be okay with asking. We all have somebody in our life that needs support in their digital skill building, whether it's somebody of an aging situation or somebody growing up and a first-time adopter. But having patience, throwing out the assumptions, and then just being approachable and support, which is what digital skill building is really going to grow within the digital navigators and really what NeighborWorks is doing. It makes perfect sense, right? Like they're building communities, first-time home buyers. Well, you're going to have access to the internet and know how to use it, and so that's a perfect married point of digital skill building and really life building. And so all of these are learned lessons, and we just need to be intentional about continuing the growth of all of it. We can't just say, hey, we got through that moment, right? I think that the next generation of teachers coming out of university, and they're going to be in all of James's schools, are going to have a whole different education on how to integrate technology in the classroom. And you know, Pluralsight and Silicon Slopes have done a really good job to elevate the awareness campaign on the need of computer sciences in the school systems, right, as a core competency. But it goes beyond just a computer science as a fancy terminology of a subject matter. It does go into what is the hardware? How do you reboot? Well, what is a reboot? Why would I want to do it? Why does my screen not come on? How does this mouse connect? What do you mean it's wireless? And so finding a way that we can all support each other without assumptions, be approachable, and really be patient on supporting the skill building of our communities is necessary, in my opinion.
Thank you. Really like that sentiment. Jasmine, I'm going to give you the same question, but a little bit of a preface. For those that are unfamiliar, NeighborWorks does so much in the community. And one of the things as I was preparing for this panel that I thought about was your lending programs and how you would have had to shift pretty rapidly your programming online. And I'm just wondering what types of things you've done to adjust to account for the need to go online.
Yeah, that's a great question, Turner. We did have to do a lot of shifting and pivoting when COVID hit. And we saw a lot of families who were struggling. We already had an online portal for people to be able to at least start the process of getting access to our lending products that we provide, such as down payment assistance and our first-time home buyers. So that was already built in. So that was kind of a plus for us because our staff were already really trained on it. They knew how to walk people through setting up their profile online. But for that to be the main place for people to access that for us, I think that was a little bit of a challenge for staff not to be able to just say, well, just come in, we'll help you do it. So it was a lot of utilizing Zoom technology and screen sharing to be able to say, okay, go here. And NeighborWorks is in a part of a national network of organizations just like us across the country. And what some of our sister organizations started doing that we're working on adapting or adopting is creating these short online videos of how to go through the process. We have been really successful in those, seeing those videos work and people really being able to just like watch it either on their phone and then do it on their computer. And I do think what Jacob said is it's very individualized. Not one customer is the same. Like the video might work for somebody, but somebody might need you to get on the phone with them and say like, do you see the little like gray box in the right hand corner of your screen? Like click that. And so we've had to do some of that. And I know a lot of our staff, they say, man, that took like 45 minutes, you know, but it's ultimately worth it. And it is just like so much patience goes into it. But then for those families to be able to access the funding that's available to get into their homes is what makes it worth it, because we really want to build our community. And so the other thing that we are also trying to work on is building into all of our lending programs that each family that comes through NeighborWorks to receive any of our lending products, making sure that they have a device at home that works and that they're going to have access to reliable internet service. So that's something that we're working on. So we're excited to hopefully in 2021 get that going and making sure that any family that comes through our doors is being able to access the internet.
Thank you. I'm going to give you all a break for just 1 second and make one more plug for audience questions. If you've been sitting on a question and you have one, I'm coming up to the end of my prepared questions. So I'd like to get to some audience questions. If you have one, please feel free to put it in the chat. The next question that I'm going to ask our panelists is to tell us about someone who's inspired them through, it can be an organization, it can be an individual, someone that's inspired you today in the digital inclusion space, or inspired you this year, I should say, in the digital inclusion space. I'm going to add the stipulation that they can't be on the call right now. And I will go first. I think we would all say Shauna and say all of you, but I'm going to take that off the table. I'll go first. And my kind of digital inclusion success story is a nonprofit here on the west side of Salt Lake City called Salty Cricket. And they are a music organization that teaches kids to play classical music and to really just celebrate all that music does for our society. And over the summer, when COVID was at its worst early on, and when schools were going digital and everything, Salty Cricket did this incredible digital summer camp where kids from Minneapolis and Baltimore and Boston and Salt Lake City got to work together during a couple of different weeks, and each week had a musical theme. So one was country music, one was Lord, and the kids in the program got to work with kids across the country to write their own piece of music, and then they debuted it on Zoom. And I ever since I saw that, I kind of was inspired by the organization being willing to just step up, evolve, and really try something new. And what I'm hoping to get out with this final question and this prompt is to give folks who are watching an understanding of all the different types of ways that organizations are evolving to bridge the digital divide. So I think first we're going to go to Joe, and then I'll go to Jasmine.
Yeah, I think what's been extraordinary to see happen is been the partnerships that we've been able to develop with the Internet Essentials partnership program. It was referenced, I think it was James who talked about it, where we can partner with local communities, community organizations, and they're able to sponsor hundreds or more of our local the folks in need, people who need connections, and they're able to get paid for by these organizations, which often have more budget. And what's been so extraordinary about it is that this was a notion that we had in March, as we're sort of spinning up and realize, man, Internet Essentials is going to be absolutely critical this year with COVID-19. We said we should do something where we can partner with our local community partners to deliver it. And we came up with this idea, and we put the whole thing together in really, really short order. And it has been just extraordinary to watch. I'm not allowed to talk about James and Salt Lake City School District, so I'll say some of our other partners, Canyon School District, and others across the state. As they've adapted with this totally new way of doing things and getting people connected and doing the heavy lifting sometimes. Another partner of ours is the International Rescue Committee, works closely with our refugee communities. So these are folks who have, in a lot of cases, some of the least exposure to technology of anybody that is part of this digital divide, and watching how diligently and how passionately the folks at IRC are working, and the folks at Canyon School District and our other Internet Essentials Partnership Program partners are working with each individual person to make sure that they're connected, has really been inspiring to me, and has really helped fuel getting up in the morning and making sure that we're finding the next partnership, that we're making the next connection, and that we're getting absolutely everybody on board as much as we can.
Thank you. How about you, Jasmine?
Yeah, so I'm going to shamelessly plug one of our WLI graduates from this recent cohort. Her name is Juliet Beltisa. She started a nonprofit organization called Codeability, which helps kids to learn how to code online and in Spanish, which is super amazing. She's a phenomenal lady, and if you have kids out there, if you're watching this and they have any inkling or any interest in coding, definitely get in contact with Juliet, because she hosted a summer camp online where kids were able to create a video game to help talk about the census that they then showed to their parents to help bring more awareness to why completing the census is super important. And so I just thought that was a really great use of, one, funds that she received, and then two, of just being able to use this online platforms to be able to bring awareness to another issue, also all in Spanish. So I think that is great. So that would have to be the person that has inspired me the most through this whole COVID-19 and trying to bridge this gap.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to put a link in the Facebook here because Club Ability has some scholarships that are available for their upcoming coding class. So I'll make sure that I share that here on the chat. Why don't we next go to Jacob, and then we'll follow him with James.
So the inspiration that I'm gleaning out of this is it's maybe not an individual, it's the collective. The pivot that nonprofits and public systems, i.e. our schools, libraries, and municipalities have made to utilize virtual video conferencing, virtual education, was done at such a moment's notice. There are a lot of CTOs and CIOs out there that have made this possible. And it's been inspirational because of how creative they've been and are. I can give an example or two in the nonprofit world. Craft Lake City, who typically has a huge festival, had to make immediate changes on that. And Angela had this brilliant idea to basically have a virtual Craft Lake City. And it reached thousands of individuals. It had, this ability where you could have your own virtual reality or virtual augmented cartoon. You could go into the spaces and meet the artists. You could experience this entire festival online. And for them to be able to turn that around in less than 90 days was just an amazing creative testament to their fortitude of still providing Craft Lake City experiences. Spy Hop and how they've taken all of their multimedia efforts, and actually Craft Lake City did this as well, and created online education STEM opportunities to support teachers and kids at home, to support after-school programming by way of registration and still having a sense of community with those that had similar interests online. And doing all of this from scratch was amazing. All of the public meetings that are happening right now by our municipal and public entities, which in some ways, yes, we have a digital divide in our community, but it has also given a lot more access to those public meetings for people to tune in if they decide to do so. And so that's the inspiration, because I do think that these are all pieces of a very complex, growing and moving puzzle. And rock stars like Jasmine and Shauna and James and Joe that are in this community are really going to help us place these pieces appropriately together. And Turner, you as well, and in your leadership, and I would be really remiss if I didn't mention Utah Communities Connected and the efforts that they've brought in terms of education and awareness. We have a lot of opportunity. The inspiration, I think, is still being recognized and is feeding a lot of our appetites to just be a better community by way of using technology.
Thank you. And how about you, James?
I would say, I was very inspired by our hourly employees in Salt Lake City School District, especially our paraprofessionals who, when the COVID hit and we went on remote learning, hundreds of them really were preparing themselves, one, to check out computers to families, connect them with internet, do home visits. We've had families who tested positive, and we were, dropping not only computers home, but also food. And, I was inspired by many of them, and some of them, I would speak to them and I would say, hey, you don't have to, you can, you don't have to work right now, take some time off. And they would, there were times that they didn't want to take some time off. It was almost like they were on a mission, working to address the needs of our kids. And one thing that I saw immediately with our after school program, all of them, the 200 plus employees that we had there, they were very, very committed to learning about how to provide better services through the digital, to online. And so we actually were able to create a virtual learning opportunity for our after school program. But none of this would have been able to happen if we didn't have the community supporting us. Mayor Wilson also some of our partners that are on this conference call. It was amazing to see. I remember, and I don't want to, again, you guys have mentioned the foundation, but also when I spoke to Google Fiber, Jacob, and I spoke to Comcast, I think we were, for quite a long time, we were having discussions, but this just took us to the next level. And it wasn't about, going through the red tape. It was about what are we going to do to make this happen? And we knew that it was going to take time to build it. And we're still learning, and we're still trying to do, like you said, Jacob, it's patience, right? And so I've learned quite a bit this year. There have been many challenges, and I believe that we've gotten further with the help of our hourly employees, our first responders, and really they've touched my heart, and they're amazing group of people that we work with, and the partners that we have. So we appreciate them for all what they've done for our kids.
Thank you. And how about you, Shauna?
It's tough to not talk about the folks on this call, but because all of you have done amazing things, especially in the past 9 months or so. I think I was planning to speak along the same lines of Jacob, of talking about how quickly organizations were able to pivot and embrace the technologies that maybe we've been avoiding because we didn't have time to learn, or all of the reasons that we haven't relied on them or incorporated them in our work before. It's been incredibly inspirational to watch Craft Lake City do their virtual thing. SpyHop had, in addition to all their online content and classes that they've created, they also started a device drive to provide refurbished computers. It's been watching the movement at the city and the work that Mayor Mendenhall has done with Aaron Bentley in trying to open computer labs and provide free public Wi-Fi and make some really long-term changes. But I think the inspiration that hits most home for me is watching some new community members, community organizations new to this space, hiring new folks to work in this area. UNP, University Neighborhood Partners, and Swazo Business Center both hired brand new digital navigators, and watching how fearless people are in being passionate and compassionate about wanting to help people get connected, and just jumping right into the work and willing to talk with people and listen to how they can support them, and being willing to do everything that they can to support them. And I think that's really where I feel like the biggest change has come. Not that people weren't willing to do that work before, but it's kind of shifted to a next level.
Well, thank you. I appreciate everyone's perspective, and I wanted to end on a note of inspiration because there are so many good people and so many good organizations all working on this issue, and the ways that each of us can impact digital inclusion are so varied. So whether it's getting involved in your church group and making sure that seniors in your religious congregation are included, and that you maybe spend time with them to help them participate in church services, all the way over to donating to a nonprofit organization working in this area. Each of us can take action to bridge the digital divide. And I hope that those of you that have been watching this live on Facebook, and those of you that watch this recording are inspired by all of our panelists and the work that they've done. I'd like to give anyone who'd like a kind of final word of advice or to share an opportunity. I'd like to give any of our panelists that opportunity. Okay, well, Jasmine.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thank everybody on this call. And that last question was a hard one, because for me, digital inclusion didn't really come to the forefront until COVID. And I think it was actually a meeting I had with Jacob, and just hearing him talk about how we could have predicted what happened with COVID and the families that would have been the most affected by who had access to reliable internet. And I was like blown away after that conversation that we had. And so I guess just leaving this conversation, and for those watching at home, I would just say, like, take a real interest in this digital inclusion stuff. Get out there, help your neighbor, help your friend, help your mom to learn this technology. And really, it really can make your life a lot easier. And there's just so much stuff that the digital world can do for you. And so don't be afraid of it, embrace it. And yeah, that's what I like to leave you guys with.
Thanks, Jasmine. Anyone else with final thoughts?
I think Jasmine said it all.
James, you're on mute.
Oh,
You can
okay.
say something.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say, if you know, in the community, and thank you to all the partners, we have computers and internet available for students, anyone who is in need. Our computers are new. We have internet, the foundation's paid for hundreds of families for internet access. So feel free to, any students, all they need to do is contact their counselor, their principal. On behalf of our superintendent, Larry Madden, we appreciate all the support and anything that we can do. If you have an innovative idea, you know what, our doors are open to those ideas, and we'll continue to work together. Thank you for all the support.
Thank you. Well, I just want to thank everyone for tonight. I don't see any audience questions, so we're going to go ahead and end the live stream now, but I just want to thank all of our panelists for your time tonight, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks so much. Take care.